Ana de Armas had always been good at pretending. From the outside, she looked like she belonged in every room she entered. Her smile came easy. Her laugh landed at the right time. Her posture never betrayed the storm inside her. But pretending was exhausting. Pretending to be okay. Pretending to not hear the whispers. Pretending to feel confident when her heart kept shrinking from the spotlight. She was the lead in a new film, a project that could change her career, but the weight of that pressure sat heavy on her shoulders. It was the second week of filming. The cameras had been set, the lights had been tested, and yet, take after take, something wasn't clicking. Anna's lines were perfect. Her expression was flawless, but there was no soul in the delivery, not like there usually was. And the director, kind but firm, finally called for a break. Everyone scattered and Anna walked off the set without a word, her eyes searching for some place to hide. She didn't know Keanu had seen everything. He had been standing just off frame, in the shadows, watching her, not out of judgment but quiet concern. He knew that look, the one she had when she walked off. It wasn't frustration. It wasn't arrogance. It was fear. And Keanu knew fear dressed as perfection better than most. He knew how it walked, how it breathed, how it fooled everyone except the ones who had worn it before. Anna found a quiet spot behind one of the trailers. She sat down on the step and held her head in her hands. Her breath was shaky. No one came after her. No one except him. Keanu didn't say her name, didn't make a sound. He just sat down on the step beside her. And for a few moments, there was only silence. The kind of silence that wasn't empty. It was soft, like someone saying, "I see you," without needing to speak. Anna didn't look up. She didn't want him to see her cry. Not him. Not the man everyone respected. Not the one who never seemed to struggle. But then he said it. One line. Soft. Slow. Careful. "You don't have to pretend with me." Anna froze. Those words, just 7 of them, cut through every wall she had built. It wasn't a grand speech. It wasn't advice. It wasn't pity. It was something else. Something she hadn't heard in a long time. Permission. Her voice broke when she whispered, "I'm just tired." Keanu nodded once, as if that made perfect sense. He leaned forward, rested his elbows on his knees, and looked out at the quiet parking lot in front of them. "You don't owe anyone perfect," he said, "especially not when you're hurting." Anna turned to look at him. He wasn't trying to fix her. He wasn't trying to lift her spirits with a joke or tell her to push through. He was just there, steady, unshaken. And that did something to her, something she didn't know how to explain. Her walls didn't fall. They gently lowered, like a gate opening just enough for light to come through. "Do you ever feel like you're not enough for the thing you've already earned?" she asked. Keanu turned his head and looked at her with those calm eyes. "Every time," he said. And that surprised her, because Keanu Reeves wasn't supposed to feel that way. Not the man who had survived grief. Not the man who walked away from fame when it felt hollow. Not the man who chose kindness even when life had given him 1,000 reasons to be bitter. But maybe that was the point. Maybe he felt it. And still showed up. Anna sat with that thought. It made her chest ache and calm at the same time. She didn't cry. She didn't smile. She just breathed. They sat there for almost 15 minutes. No script, no camera, no pretending. Finally, she stood up, wiped her eyes gently, not to hide them, but to let herself start fresh. "Thank you," she said. Keanu didn't stand yet. He just looked up at her. "You're stronger than you think, Anna. You don't need to prove anything to me. Just be." She nodded slowly, walked back toward set, and for the first time in weeks, her steps felt lighter. What she didn't know was that the next scene she filmed, right after that moment, would end up being the one that made everyone go quiet. The one the director kept. The one that changed everything. And it started because one man chose to sit quietly beside her and say one line she would never forget. And sometimes the most powerful moments are the ones that arrive quietly, unannounced, and change you forever. The next morning came with a different kind of silence. Not the heavy silence of fear or overthinking. It was quiet, but it didn't feel empty. It felt full, like the pause before music starts, or the space right after a deep breath. Anna sat in her trailer, sipping tea alone, replaying the night before in her head. The way Keanu had spoken, not like an actor, not like a mentor, but like someone who had walked through his own fire and come out the other side. Gentle, clear, and still whole. His words stayed with her, just one real moment a day. It had never occurred to her that surviving something hard didn't have to mean conquering the whole thing. Maybe it could just mean staying present through one honest second at a time. She opened her script, and for the first time, she didn't read it like a list of tasks. She didn't think about what the director wanted or what critics might say. Instead, she asked herself a different question. What does this woman feel when she's alone with no one watching? Anna had never acted that way before. She had always been focused on delivering, on nailing it. But now, she wanted to listen to the character, not perform her, just listen. On set, everything felt different. The cameras didn't scare her. The lights didn't shrink her confidence. The director said action, and Anna didn't rush to become someone else. She stepped into the character's world with gentleness, and it showed. The crew could feel it. Even the sound guy, who rarely spoke unless something was wrong, leaned over to a grip and whispered, "That didn't feel like acting." Anna didn't hear it. She didn't need to. She was finally being, not pretending. After the scene, she stepped off set and found Keanu leaning against a nearby wall, arms crossed, eyes calm. She smiled, a small one. Not forced, just soft. "You were present," he said. Anna tilted her head. "How do you see that?" He shrugged lightly. "I only recognize it because I know what it looks like to disappear." Those words hit her deep, because that's what she had been doing, for years, disappearing behind expectations, behind roles, behind the version of herself that looked strong but felt lost. And no one had ever said it so simply. Keanu wasn't just teaching her how to act better. He was teaching her how to show up as herself. Later that afternoon, between scenes, Anna sat with her journal. She rarely wrote during shoots. It always felt like a luxury she couldn't afford. But now it felt necessary. She needed to hold on to these truths before they faded. She wrote, "Keanu's not trying to teach me anything. He's just making space. And in that space, I hear my own voice clearer. It's scary, but it's also mine." She closed the notebook and sat still for a long time. That evening, the studio arranged a quick interview session, a few press clips to promote the film early, nothing intense, just 5 minutes in front of a camera, talking about the process. When it was her turn, Anna sat down under the lights. The interviewer smiled and asked, "How's the experience been so far?" Anna could have said the usual things. Great crew, challenging role, really exciting. But something inside her said, "Don't hide again." So she took a breath and said softly, "I've been learning how to stop pretending." The interviewer blinked, surprised. Anna continued, "I've spent a lot of years trying to be exactly what people wanted. But this project, and one person in particular, reminded me that I don't have to perform all the time. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is be exactly who we are, even when we're unsure." The interviewer tried to pivot. Can you tell us who that person is? Anna smiled but didn't answer. Some moments are meant to stay between souls. The clip went viral. Not because she said something shocking, but because she said something real. In an industry full of masks, her honesty was like a clear bell in a crowded room. People watched and rewatched it. Young actors posted it with captions like, "I needed to hear this." Strangers wrote long comments about how they'd been pretending too. Not just on stage, but in their lives. Anna didn't respond to any of it. But that night, as she sat alone in her room, phone turned off, she whispered the same words she'd told the camera. "I'm learning how to stop pretending." There was a knock on her door. She opened it. Keanu stood there with a quiet smile and said, "Walk with me?" She nodded, grabbed her hoodie, and together they walked down the quiet, dark path behind the hotel. The moon was high, the night gentle. No cameras, no interviews, just two people, walking without needing to impress each other. After a while, Keanu said, "You're starting to shine." Anna laughed softly. "I'm just trying to be less afraid." "That's when it happens," he said. "The moment you stop hiding, the light finds you." They walked on. No need to explain further. Those words hung in the air like a quiet truth. Anna didn't say it out loud, but in that moment, she realized something. She had never felt more herself than she did in his quiet company. The next few days passed like a quiet rhythm. Not fast, not slow, just steady. Anna woke each morning with a different kind of energy. Not excitement, not pressure, just presence. She no longer rushed to mirror what others expected. She was learning to feel her way through the day, scene by scene, word by word, moment by moment. And yet, even with her new sense of calm, the storm came. It always does. They were filming a complicated sequence in an abandoned church. High ceilings, shattered windows, echoing floors. The script called for deep emotion, the kind that felt close to home for Anna. Maybe too close. In the scene, her character had to face someone who had betrayed her. Not with anger, but with stillness. She was supposed to hold the pain without showing it fully, to let the audience feel what she didn't say. Anna tried. The first take was fine. The second was better. But by the third, her hands started shaking. Not because of the script. Because the words in the scene reminded her of someone she hadn't spoken to in years. Someone who had hurt her quietly. With distance. With silence. Someone who had made her feel invisible at a time she was still learning how to be seen. And suddenly, she wasn't acting anymore. She was standing there, in front of cameras, with old wounds rising up like they had never healed. She froze. The director paused the take. Someone called for a reset. People shuffled around, offered her water. Makeup touched her shoulder gently. Anna nodded, whispered, "I'm okay," and walked out of the room. But she wasn't. She found the stairwell and sat on the second step, back against the wall, knees pulled up. She didn't cry. Not yet. But her chest was tight, her breath shallow. The feeling of being too much started creeping in again. Then footsteps approached. She didn't have to look to know who it was. Keanu sat down on the step beside her without a word. For a moment, he didn't ask questions, didn't try to comfort. He just sat. Then after a while, he said, "You don't have to carry it alone." Anna turned to him slowly, her eyes glossy, her voice soft. "I thought I let it go," she said, "but it's still there, all of it, like it never left." Keanu nodded. "Some things don't leave," he replied. "They just wait, and they show up when you're strong enough to look at them." Anna let those words sit in the air. She whispered, "I don't feel strong right now." Keanu gently turned his head toward her. "You don't have to feel it to be it." and that cracked something open inside her, not in a painful way, but in a way that allowed the tears to finally come. Not loud, not dramatic, just slow, steady, and needed. She cried into her hands, not because she was broken, but because she was healing. And he didn't flinch, didn't move away. He stayed right there, a quiet anchor in her storm. When the tears stopped, Anna looked at him, her voice smaller than usual. "I'm sorry." Keanu shook his head. "Never apologize for feeling deeply. It means you're alive." She laughed softly through her sniffles. "You always say the exact thing I need." He smiled. "That's because I don't say much." That made her laugh again, this time for real. They sat a little longer, then she stood up, wiped her face, took a long breath. "Ready?" he asked. She nodded. "But this time," she said, "I'm not doing the scene for them. I'm doing it for me." The next take was raw. Anna didn't pretend to be strong. She didn't try to mask the hurt. She let her silence speak. She let her stillness shake. And when the scene ended, there was no applause, no shout of brilliant, just a quiet that filled the room like a held breath. The director whispered, "Cut," and no one moved. Because they all felt it, somehow without showing much, she had shown everything. Afterwards, Keanu gave her a thumbs up from the back of the room, just one simple gesture, and it meant more than any standing ovation. That night, Anna couldn't sleep, not because she was anxious, but because something inside her had shifted. She pulled out her journal and wrote, "I've been afraid of the storm for so long, but maybe it didn't come to break me. Maybe it came to show me who I am without the walls." She closed the journal, rested her hand on the cover, and whispered to the dark, "Thank you." The next morning, she woke up early, went for a walk alone before call time. The sun was rising gently over the trees, and in the stillness she realized she wasn't pretending anymore. She was feeling. And that made all the difference. Anna walked into set that morning with no armor. Her eyes were softer, her shoulders lower. Something in her had melted quietly overnight, not in a way that made her smaller, but in a way that made her real. The kind of real that made people pause when they saw her, not because of beauty or fame, but because her presence felt different. It was the final week of filming. The days were long, scenes ran heavy, everyone was tired. But Anna didn't feel drained the way she used to, because now she wasn't performing from a place of fear. She was showing up from a place of truth, and that changed everything. The final scene was intense. Her character had to stand in front of a mirror, face herself, and finally speak the words she had been running from the entire film. The monologue was vulnerable. It was about shame, silence, and the ache of never feeling enough. Anna knew the lines, but when the director said action, she didn't deliver them from memory. She lived them. Her voice trembled, her lip quivered. There was no performance, no craft, just her, standing there, saying things she had never said even to herself. "I kept trying to be smaller so people could love me easier. I thought if I made myself quiet, pretty, polite, maybe they'd stay. But I was never too much. I was just never seen fully." As the camera rolled, a single tear slid down her cheek. She didn't wipe it, and in that moment, something unspoken passed through the room. People didn't just see her character. They saw Anna, the part of her that had been waiting to speak, the part that had been told she had to fit into something softer, quieter, easier to digest. But not anymore. When the scene ended, the director didn't say, "Cut," immediately. He stood there, eyes wide, then finally whispered, "That's the one." Everyone exhaled. Anna stepped out of frame. She wasn't shaking. She wasn't overwhelmed. She was calm, clear, almost peaceful. Keanu was waiting for her at the edge of the soundstage. They walked outside together without speaking. The air was warm. The sun had started to lower, brushing the tops of the trees in gold. Finally, Keanu asked, "How did that feel?" Anna looked up at the sky. "Like I finally forgave myself for becoming what people wanted," she said. Keanu nodded slowly. Then he said something she would never forget. Not because of how it sounded, but because of what it meant. "You were never too much. You were just never seen fully." Anna felt those words enter her like a breath she hadn't taken in years. No one had ever said that to her. Not in childhood, not in auditions, not in long conversations after parties. And yet it was the sentence she had always needed. Her throat tightened. She looked at him, not with surprise, not with admiration, but with a soft kind of knowing. "Thank you," she said. Keanu smiled. "You don't owe me thanks," he replied. "You did this yourself. I just reminded you that you were allowed." Later that evening, the cast held a small rap gathering. There was laughter, toasts, photos, all the things that usually came at the end of something big. Anna joined in, but she stayed quiet. Not because she was withdrawn, but because she was full of a truth she was still holding carefully. When it was time for her to speak, to give her final words to the crew, she stood in front of everyone and took a long breath. Then she said, "I used to think the best acting came from controlling emotion. But I've learned it comes from honoring it, from trusting that what's inside us matters." People clapped. Some even stood. But Anna didn't need the applause this time. She looked toward Keanu, who stood in the back, arms folded, nodding with a small smile. And that's when she knew. She would carry this chapter with her for the rest of her life. Not because it made her more famous, not because it made her stronger, but because it made her honest. The next morning, the hotel lobby was quiet as everyone checked out. Anna was standing at the front desk, waiting for her car, when Keanu appeared beside her with a coffee in hand. He handed it to her without a word. She smiled. "You always know," she said. "You always feel," he replied. They stood side by side, watching people hurry around them. Then Keanu said softly, "There's one more thing you should know." Anna turned to him, curious. He looked at her, steady and kind. "You were never hard to love. People just didn't understand how to hold you." Those words didn't make her cry. They made her still. Because deep down, that had always been her fear, that she was too complicated, too intense, too sensitive. But now, standing beside someone who saw her clearly, she finally believed what she never dared to say. She wasn't too much. She was just misread. Months passed. The film was released quietly without much noise. It wasn't a blockbuster. It wasn't meant to be. It was a character-driven story, slow and emotional, the kind that didn't chase fame but found its place in the hearts of those who needed it. And slowly, something strange happened. The film started catching fire, not through ads or campaigns, but through word of mouth. Small theaters kept adding screenings. People began talking about that one scene, the mirror scene, the one where Anna stood alone and said the words that felt like they were pulled from every unspoken pain. Reviews poured in, not about glamour or effects, but about truth, about presence. People didn't say Anna played the character well. They said she was the character. A well-known critic wrote, "There's a stillness in her eyes that tells a story long before she speaks. It's not performance, it's surrender." And Anna stayed quiet through all of it. She didn't do long interviews. She didn't bask in the praise, because she didn't need to anymore. She had already received the most important validation, her own. Keanu had returned to another project overseas. They didn't talk every day, didn't send constant messages, but there was a thread between them, invisible and strong. something that didn't need words. Then one afternoon, Anna got a call. The film had been nominated, a major award, and not just for the film, for her. She sat still when she heard the news, not from shock, but from something softer, something like peace. Because this time, the recognition didn't feel like a spotlight. It felt like a mirror, finally reflecting the truth she had stopped hiding from. The night of the awards arrived. She wore a simple black dress. No glitter, no drama, just elegance. Before leaving her hotel room, she paused in front of the mirror, the same kind she had stood in front of months ago, shaking with old pain. But now, her reflection didn't look like a question. It looked like an answer. She arrived on the carpet. Flashes, cameras, voices shouting her name. She smiled, waved, but her heart stayed steady. Inside the theater, the ceremony rolled on. Speeches, applause, jokes. Then her category was announced. Her name was read, and the room erupted. She didn't cry. She walked to the stage with the same stillness that had carried her through every moment since that one line Keanu had given her. "You don't have to pretend with me." Anna stood at the microphone, holding the award, people waiting. She looked around, took a long breath, then spoke. "This is not because I acted well. It's because I stopped trying to be perfect." The room quieted. She continued. "There were times in my life where I thought being enough meant hiding the messy parts, the soft parts, the loud feelings, the unspoken fears. But someone reminded me that I didn't have to be small to be worthy." She looked down at the statue in her hands. "This isn't a trophy. It's proof that honesty is powerful." She paused. Then, with a soft smile, she added, "Keanu, if you're watching, thank you for saying one line that changed everything." People clapped. Some stood. But in Anna's mind, she wasn't standing on a stage. She was back on that trailer step, beside the man who sat with her in silence, and made her feel seen. Later that night, in her hotel room, she turned off the lights, sat quietly, and her phone buzzed. A single message. "Keanu, you reminded me who I am when no one's watching." She smiled, held the phone to her heart, and whispered, "So did you." The world saw a performance, but what truly mattered was the quiet truth behind it. Two people crossing paths not to change each other, but to remind each other that the softest words can carry the loudest healing, and that sometimes one line is all it takes. Anna didn't tell anyone what Keanu had said. Not the director, not the makeup artist, not even her closest friend on set. It wasn't a secret, it just felt sacred. Something quiet and true that didn't need to be explained or shared. That line, "You don't have to pretend with me," had wrapped around her like a soft blanket in a cold room. It hadn't fixed everything, but it gave her something to stand on when the ground beneath her felt like it was disappearing. The next scene required depth, vulnerability. The script called for tears, but not the kind that could be faked. They had to feel earned, real. That was the part Anna had struggled with before. But this time, something had shifted. When the camera rolled, she didn't force anything. She didn't act like she had been acting. She just remembered. She remembered sitting beside Keanu. Remembered the way he didn't try to save her, just listened. Remembered how his silence was more comforting than any crowd's cheer. The tears came naturally this time. Not too much, not dramatic, just enough to break the surface of her voice. And when the director called cut, no one said anything for a moment, not out of awkwardness, but because they felt it, that something powerful had just happened. Anna looked toward the monitor and saw the playback. And for the first time in days, she didn't critique herself. She didn't pick apart her expression or posture. She just watched and accepted. Keanu gave her a soft nod from across the room. Nothing more. And that was enough. But the story wasn't just about a scene. It was about what came after. They had a small dinner gathering that evening, just the cast and key crew, a simple thank you from the producers. It wasn't formal, but it wasn't casual either. Anna almost didn't go. Her energy was still fragile, like something just starting to heal. But she remembered what Keanu said. You don't have to pretend with me. And maybe that didn't only apply to him. Maybe it meant she could be a little more real with everyone. So she went. The dinner was hosted in a warm, wood-paneled room of a quiet hotel restaurant. Candles flickered gently on the long table, and laughter floated between bites and wine glasses. People complimented her on the scene from earlier, told her it was breathtaking. Some even said they didn't recognize her, like something raw had been unlocked. She smiled, thanked them. But inside she felt something twist. Because while she appreciated the praise, it also reminded her of how often she had hidden. How long she had spent trying to become someone she thought people wanted, instead of being who she really was. It wasn't their fault. It was her own fear. The fear of not being enough, or being too much, or being the wrong kind of open. Midway through dinner, Keanu quietly took the empty chair beside her. He didn't interrupt the conversation, didn't shift the energy. He just brought his quiet with him, and somehow that made her feel safer. She leaned toward him and said softly, "It's strange. Everyone thinks I gave something new today, but it was actually the first time I didn't give anything. I just let something be." Keanu nodded. Sometimes silence is louder than applause. Those words landed deep, like they were meant for her, but also for something greater, something she didn't fully understand yet. Anna looked around the room. People were still laughing, still eating, and yet she felt removed. Not in a bad way, but in a new way. Like she had stepped into another version of herself, one where she wasn't chasing their approval, just sharing space. After dinner, as people began to say their goodbyes, Anna walked out onto the small hotel balcony. The city lights glowed softly below. She breathed in the cool air and rested her hands on the railing. Keanu joined her again, this time with 2 mugs of tea. He offered her one without speaking. She accepted it with a smile. For a long while, they just stood there. No need for small talk. No need to fill the quiet. The noise of the city below faded. The stars above were barely visible, but present. Then Keanu said, almost as if he was speaking to the night, "There were years where I couldn't feel joy in anything, not in work, not in friends, not even in moments like this." Anna turned to look at him, surprised, humbled. "What changed?" she asked softly. He paused, then said, "I stopped needing every day to make sense. I just tried to make sure one moment, just one, was real. Some days, that's all I had. One real moment." Anna's throat tightened. Her eyes stung. She whispered, "Like that line you gave me?" Keanu looked at her. "No," he said gently. "Like the way you received it." Anna had no words, because in that single sentence, he told her something she'd never considered. It wasn't just about what people gave, it was about what you allowed yourself to feel, to hold,